Hi, thanks for joining me today. I have a new alternate project to share with you, and it is for the March 2017 Paper Pumpkin Kit. We're going to be making some Dreamcatcher cards, and here's a quick shot of all three, but I'm going to show you the first one, which is the blue one in the center, and then we're going to zip through the other two just to shorten up the video. We're going to begin with this panel, which is the in color brushstroke panel, and I think they're actually the inserts for the bunny ear sacks. Just sketching the shape out on the back side of that card panel there, just so you can see what I'm drawing. And what we're doing is creating two feathers for this piece. We're going to create a large feather and a medium-sized feather. While I was working with this piece, and after I cut it all out, it didn't seem to come apart since it is a sticker. But later in the video, I'm just going to show you that I did peel it off and put it on a thin card stock. And it does make it a bit thicker, but it still works fine. Okay, so we're just going to shape this feather, and then we're going to make a tip for a feather tip for the bottom of the feather. And then once you do that, just make sure your scissors is angled towards that tip, and then just cut at a little angle and then create like little notches or little triangle notches on each side. You can do as many as you want or as little. And when you flip it over, make sure you're still angled towards the end of that feather tip. And when you do the notches, try to make one a little longer than the other. And then we'll just work on the second one. We'll just make that end tip again for the feather, and then make sure again you're angled towards that tip. For the third feather, we're going to use the panel that has all the small little bunny ears. And we'll use the same design. Just cut that little itty bitty piece out and create our teeny tiny little feather. Okay, now that we're done that, we're going to put a crease down the center of each feather just so that it gives it more interest and some dimension. And we're going to use this 6x3 panel, and we're going to cut it in half. And we're going to use the layering circle dies. We're going to grab these two dies and we're going to create a outside frame. I'm not going to use it for this card, but I'm going to do it on the other last two cards. Okay, so we're just going to die cut that out and see how it created that outside border or frame. Not that one, that one. Okay, so moving on to the circle now, and what we're going to do is create a tiny little mask, which I'm going to use the 1/2-inch punch just to mask off that center. And that was just some anti-static powder. And I did do it without that centerpiece, but it just got too much embossing powder on it, and so I think it looked a lot better with the circle without any embossing on it. For the stamping, firstly, the design is very busy, so it is a little hard to see what you're doing, but the process here is you're going to stamp north, south, east, west first. That created your quarter sections. And what you're going to do is you're going to stamp in each quarter 3 more times. So that's the process. And it is hard to see what you're doing, so that's why I kept picking it up and trying to get the glare, the shine angled just right so I can see where I have to stamp next. So I'm not going to lie, it's a bit difficult to do, but just go slowly and be patient. What you could do is stamp out the first part and then emboss it and set it, and then stamp the next part and do the same thing, if that makes it easier for you. Just make sure you don't touch the embossing once it's heated up because you could smudge it or burn yourself. Ask me how I know that. And we're almost ready to put the embossing powder on it. For this card, I did remove the center mask. I don't think it matters too much if you leave it on or remove it. You just have to be careful taking it off once the embossing powder is on it. And if you do remove it, just make sure there's no embossing powder on the center before you heat it up. Now that we have the embossing powder on it, doesn't it look like a spirograph? And it really toned down that background. I actually like it now. Okay, so we're going to create a circle die with the larger one that we used originally. And that's going to be the backing for this piece. But we're going to raise that piece up with some dimensionals. And we're going to put it onto a panel, which is Island Indigo. And I did cut this down later on to a 4" by 5 1/4. And we'll place the feathers and then we'll just glue each one down. For the sentiment for this card, I'm going to use a retired stamp set. It's called a round array, and they're little small circle stamps, really cute. And we'll put some pearls on each one of the feathers. And I also decided that I'm going to put some flowers on this card too. Here is the stamp set that we're going to use, and we're going to use the one called You Make Me Smile. It is a little bit small for the card itself, but I didn't want to take away from the dream catcher. So we'll just fussy cut that out. And then we'll just pop that up with a dimensional. And it looks pretty good, but then I decided that it needed something else. So we're going to put the flowers on there in just a moment. Here's the card base, the standard top folding at 4 1/4 by 11, score at 5 1/2, and that sweet sugar plum card panel there is the full 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then we'll frame it with the Island Indigo. Here are the same flowers that I've been using, and I've pre-colored it and fussy cut them out earlier, and we're just going to stick that on the left top corner of the dream catcher there. And then to finish that off, we're going to put some Wink Castella on there to get it all nice and glittery. And that's it for the first card, and I'm just sharing a couple of stills. And we're going to move on to the second card in just a moment. For the sentiment on the second card, I'm going to use a new stamp called Any Occasion, which is in the celebration that's occurring right now. And I'm going to use that thank you along with that line stamp. And again, we're going to be using that basket bunch stamp set. We're going to use that flower, and we're also going to use that little leaf above that flower. We're going to color a bunch of these for the second and third card. And I'm just going to show you the colors that I've used. They're Stampin' Write markers. And I'm coloring on watercolor paper. And that is a water brush. So very simple coloring. It is a very tiny little image. So I'm not going to show you too much of it because it kind of gets a little boring. But we're just going to jump ahead there after I lay down all the colors on the first flower. And then I'm going to fussy cut it all out. And I did forget the centers, so I'm just putting on some yellow centers. And then we're going to glue all the pieces together. And I really like it with those little itty bitty leaves. Here is the thank you sentiment that I pre-stamped and fussy cut ahead of time. And we're going to put the flowers at each end. It's a pretty cute sentiment. I did stamp it like 3 times and I couldn't get it lined up, but it'll do. And we're going to move on to that frame, the outside frame. So I did cut out a bunch of pieces there and see how it all clicks in together. That outside little separate frame, I colored it with a sponge dauber with Dapper Denim. And I decided to do that because I didn't want to cut out a piece of cardstock and then die cut the outer circle. So I just colored it with the ink. And I think it works out just fine. And we're just going to glue everything together. And the sentiment, we're going to put that right over top. The white panel is 3 1/4 by 4 1/4, and it is embossed using the Sparkle Embossing folder. So that's our second card for today, and we're going to move on to the third card. But before we do that, I just want to mention about some rulers. I really wanted to share this little tidbit. I have this Tim Holtz ruler that I bought recently and also this Fiskars one that I've been using for many years. The print's been coming off and it was really bugging me, and I really like it because it has a 1/16 marking unlike the Tim Holtz one. Okay, so what I did was I actually emailed Fiskars. They do have a very good warranty, like a lifetime warranty, so I thought I'd give it a shot. I emailed them, sent them a photo of the print coming off, and they mailed me a brand new one. How cool is that? Sadly, the print on the back is still the same and probably will come off over time. And just a note, it's not a paid commercial. I just wanted to share that. So back to the project, I'm using Pacific Point and I'm going to draw some vertical and horizontal lines with the marker, and this way there's some contrast to this orange piece of cardstock because once you emboss it with that spirograph look, it's going to look really flat without any contrasting color. So I'm just going to add to the madness here. Once you finish this, then you'll be stamping again with the bunny ear and then embossing. So jumping ahead, we're going to put the large bunny ear and the small bunny ear onto a card panel. Instead of just cutting out the feathers as is, we're going to stick it down on a piece of cardstock. Here's the sentiment we're going to use. The stamp set is Love Sparkles, and we use the cheer sentiment. And there's also a little one called To You and Yours, but we're going to use the To You only and put it right next to the word cheers. And you'll see that on the stills coming up. As for the feathers on this card, I did stamp and emboss it, but I think I did it a little too much, so don't stamp it too many times. And to compensate, I did put the first card design on it to break it up because it was just a little too washed. So here's some stills on this third card. And there's the To You that I added. I hope you enjoyed today's video and got inspired in using your paper pumpkin kit. Thanks so much for joining me today, and stay tuned for more alternate projects. Bye for now.